Hello and welcome to another Cotton Incorporated podcast. My name is John Devine, Senior Economist. This podcast is the third in a series that discusses Chinese cotton policy and its relationship to the global cotton market. In the first episode of this series, we looked at how policies maintaining high domestic prices have resulted in some important changes to the Chinese supply situation. In the second episode, we looked at how Chinese policies are implemented through the reserve system and import quotas. In this podcast, we look at how Chinese policies have affected cotton prices around the world. To begin our discussion, we will take a look at Chinese and world cotton prices. In this chart, the red line indicates the Chinese cotton, or CC index. The blue line represents the A index. The CC index is an average of mill-delivered prices for Chinese cotton sent to Chinese mills. The A index is an average of export offers from cotton shipping countries. When we look at these price data, we see the CC index has almost always been higher than the A index. Prior to the 2010-2011 spike in cotton prices, and before recent Chinese policies maintaining high domestic prices were put into place, the average separation between the CC index and the A index was about 20 cents per pound. If we zoom into the time period since the spike, and since the policies maintaining high domestic prices were put into place, we can see the difference has widened dramatically, increasing enough to set record levels of separation. This has been due in large part to the price guarantees that have been the dominant element of Chinese cotton policy for the last 3 crop years. Reserve purchases enforcing price guarantees have been made between September and March since the 2011-2012 crop year. During the 2011-2012 crop year, the price guaranteed to Chinese growers was 19,800 RMB per ton. For the 2012-2013 crop year, the guarantee was increased to 20,400 RMB per ton, and the same guaranteed price was continued in the 2013-2014 crop year. Strengthening of the RMB against the dollar was another factor that helped bring the guaranteed price higher in terms of U.S. cents per pound each of the last 3 crop years. With the A index either decreasing or stable for most of the last 3 crop years, higher values for price guarantees expressed in cents per pound implied widening separation between Chinese prices and the A index. The large magnitude of separation is important since it provides us an indication of where Chinese cotton could be expected to go. And with the guaranteed prices so high relative to world levels, much of the Chinese cotton harvest has flowed into the reserve system since 2011-2012. During the 2011-2012 crop year, when the average separation between world prices and the price guarantee was 38 cents per pound, we saw the reserve system purchase 14.4 million bales. This represented a little over 40% of that year's harvest. In each of the following 2 crop years, the average separation between the guaranteed government price and the A index was 51 cents per pound. With a wider separation between the reserve price and world prices, more cotton flowed into the reserve system. In 2012-2013, over 85% of the Chinese harvest was sold to reserves. In 2013-2014, the figure was close to 90%. These high proportions are important because we have to remember that once cotton moves into the reserve system, it can be withheld from the market. We also have to remember that Chinese mills are not only still in operation, but they're consuming more cotton than any other country. And Chinese spinners have to get their cotton from somewhere. With large portions of each harvest flowing into reserves, and not to a market where mills could access the cotton directly, a major question for the world cotton market has been, where will Chinese mills get their cotton? From releases from reserves or from imports? In reality, the cotton going to Chinese mills could be expected to come from both sources, but the proportion coming from reserves versus the proportion coming from imports has been critically important for world cotton prices. The connection between the Chinese market and the rest of the world is trade. As we learned in the first podcast, China is the largest cotton importer, and we saw how China increased their imports during the period when the high price policies were in place. This indicates that an answer to our question regarding how Chinese mills would get their cotton was generally through higher imports. The increase in Chinese import volumes is important since the cotton shipped to China has to come from somewhere, and higher Chinese imports imply higher global exports. In the 3 crop years since China's high price policies were in place, global exports increased by about 30%. Higher export volumes kept available stocks in exporting countries, like the U.S., from dramatically increasing in recent years. In turn, the tightness in available export supplies prevented world prices like the A index from falling farther than they did. The point here is that Chinese import demand affects available supply in other countries, and therefore can affect prices everywhere. This is important when we think about future price direction because, as we learned in the second podcast, the Chinese government regulates how much cotton is allowed into the country by deciding how much import quota will be issued beyond the WTO minimum. Since quota is released according to government decision, there is considerable uncertainty regarding how much cotton may be allowed into China each crop year. With indications suggesting China may begin to supply mills with higher amounts of cotton from reserves, the question of how much cotton China might import can be expected to continue to be a major source of uncertainty for the global cotton market in years to come. To better understand the importance of Chinese import demand to world cotton prices, we can look at some figures related to the 2012-2013 crop year. What we are looking at are USDA estimates regarding Chinese import volumes made in different months. These are the same data that appear in the monthly economic letter. The figure on the far left is the USDA estimate made in August of 2012, at the beginning of the crop year. The figure at the far right is the estimate made in August of 2013, after the end of the 2012-2013 crop year, and when customs data were available to make that month's estimate far more accurate. When we look at these estimates, we see there's a large difference between what was initially forecast and what eventually occurred. The error in early estimates could be explained in large part by the uncertainty regarding how much Chinese import quota might be issued. The reason I wanted to show all this data was to emphasize the importance of the Chinese import figure to world cotton prices. We can take a look at that relationship by simply adding monthly averages for the A index. When we do that, we see world cotton prices decreased with Chinese import estimates between August and November of 2012. Prices increased with Chinese import estimates from November through the spring of 2013 before leveling off with Chinese import figures in the summer. When we take a look at parallel figures for the 2013-2014 crop year, we see a less direct relationship. In the current crop year, USDA estimates for Chinese imports have been unchanged. Meanwhile, world prices increased rather sharply between November and March. That's because different crop years are affected by different sets of factors. In 2013-2014, world prices have been able to increase despite lower Chinese import demand due to the global harvest declining about 7 million bales relative to 2012-2013, and import demand outside of China increasing by about 2 million bales. Chinese import quota is issued on a calendar year basis, and if China becomes a more aggressive buyer of international supplies in 2014, index prices could be expected to continue to find support. And that concludes this podcast. The purpose of this episode was to emphasize how Chinese cotton policy affects the global cotton market by determining Chinese import volumes. Chinese imports are important to the global cotton market since they impact how much cotton might or might not be available outside the country. If you're interested in more information, please listen to the other podcasts in this series. In addition, you can email me at the address shown here. Thank you for your interest.